Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento. If there's one thing that I know we're all doing in our businesses, and probably in your 9-to-5 jobs too, if you still have a 9-to-5 job, if you're one of those wantrepreneurs or you're an earlier stage entrepreneur, it's that we all have virtual meetings, and I'll tell you what, I can't think of many good solutions when it comes to ways to make virtual meetings more productive, more enjoyable for all of us involved. But fortunately, there's incredible innovators and brilliant minds working towards solving that problem, and we are joined by one of those innovators and fellow entrepreneurs in today's episode. So I'm very excited to introduce you to Robert Glenn. We're going to learn so much from Robert today. I absolutely love the stuff that he's built. I love the value and the strategic and intentional thinking that he brings to the table. So just to tell you a little bit about Robert, he's a software consultant turned entrepreneur and thought leader, and is the founder and CEO of Kopa AI. In his previous work, he specialized in automated infrastructure as code, software lifecycle management, and cloud native architecture. And he's taken all of those experiences, and his company develops Kopa AI, which is enterprise software that improves virtual meeting productivity by focusing on participants' awareness and mental health. Kopa AI seamlessly plugs into existing video conferencing solutions and acts as a personal coach for each user. Using multiple agents and purpose-fit models, Kopa AI monitors virtual meeting participants and drives interactions with them, enhancing their awareness and productivity. I think in a world where everyone's talking about AI at a really basic level, Robert is thinking about it in different ways. So we're all going to learn a lot from him today. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Robert Glenn. All right, Robert, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Brian. Nice to be here.
Yes. I'm so excited that you're here because you heard the teaser. I think you think about AI in such a different way than most people are viewing it on just the surface level. But before I geek out about that too much and pick your brain there, take us beyond the bio. Who's Robert? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So I have been a technologist for the last 13 or 14 years. Ever since leaving grad school, I've been a front-end developer, full-stack developer, DevOps, and most recently I've been focused on any scale architectures in any of the popular cloud providers, focusing on infrastructure as code and automation. I live in Austin, Texas, with my lovely wife and stepdaughter. I spend my free time enjoying the live music that's available, playing music myself. And really, we recently moved here, so I'm still getting used to the area and looking forward to getting everything that Austin has to offer.
Yes, I love that overview, especially because, Robert, I'll call this out really early on in our conversation. People like you who have these incredible tech skills and so many experiences and talents all in your repertoire. I always think about how many possibilities you must see in the world because you are a builder by nature and there's so many cool things that you're able to build. Talk to us about Kopa AI and obviously developing Kopa AI. Where did that one idea come from? And then two, I love hearing the spark from so many fellow entrepreneurs. When did you go from idea to, I want to build something, I want to actually solve this problem in the marketplace?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I spent the last decade or so as a consultant working for one of the major tech consulting firms. And ever since the pandemic, I've been on just nonstop video conferencing sessions, and it's with clients, teams, you name it. They will be back to back. They run over each other. People will be late to a meeting. Things get delayed. We have to create follow-up meetings. A lot of, new entrants into the corporate world coming from colleges are joining totally remote. They're joining teams where, they've never met any of their either peers or superiors in person. And that leaves a huge gap. And I certainly felt it over the last several years. The amount of time wasted in meetings, the number of times where I'm trying to just catch up in a meeting. I might be multitasking on something that I need to catch up because I didn't have time to work on it outside of meetings. So that's really where the idea for Copacetic came from. I think that we are at a place in, technology and history that we really need to be using the advancements in technology like AI to improve our lives in those cases. I think AI is a great way to enhance the human touch rather than replacing it. So that's really where the idea came from for Copacetic. In terms of the spark, I mean, just frankly, a lot of it came out of, early mornings and late nights, burning out and realizing that there has got to be a better way. I ended up attending a conference in San Francisco, saw all of these great new advancements, especially in smaller language models and more fit to purpose models. And I realized that the time was now. Now, so if not me, then someone else is going to figure this out. And I think it couldn't come it couldn't come sooner.
Yeah, I totally agree, Robert, especially because you raised 2 points there that I think we all feel inherently, but I don't think we say the words out loud often enough. And I'm so grateful for you calling both of those things out, even this early on in the conversation. One is the connection piece. I'm clearly an extreme extrovert. I have a lot of energy and I really rely on being around other people and feeding off of their energy. And it's funny, all my closest friends know that Tuesdays, I do 8 interviews back to back to back. Like Tuesdays are my podcast recording days. And so everyone thinks, oh, that must make you feel like completely fulfilled as an extrovert on those days. The truth is, Robert, that after my interviews are over, I need to get out of the house. I need to be around people in real life because there is still something missing in traditional, just purely video calls. And we've got no sort of engagement. Like you and I are obviously recording for a podcast right now. We're not chatting with each other. We're not dropping funny gifs. We're obviously not in each other's presence. So there is that connection piece that goes along with it. But you also called out how way too many meetings feel like a waste of time. And it reminds me, I worked in corporate for 10 months, Robert, and I printed out this meme for my coworkers that said, meetings, the alternative to work. And I often felt that way. So I'd love for you to go deeper into those two things, because obviously you've given so much attention to them in the way that you've developed Kopa AI. How do we start attacking those two problems? And what's Kopa AI bring there that starts to fix that gap?
Yeah, so one, I think, thing that you pointed out was just that lack of connection. You mentioned you're an extrovert. I'm probably more skewing introvert. I also don't feel very fulfilled by the virtual meeting experience. For me, I like to think of Kopa and Copacetic as your personal meeting buddy. It's the maybe the other person on the call that is sharing those memes with you. Maybe it's more formal than that, but the idea is filling in those gaps. Somebody who has your back, and maybe even filling in some of those details of keeping you track with things that are maybe agreed to in a meeting. I know a lot of times I will agree to doing something after a meeting or something, and then I jump into 2-3 other meetings and I forget what I agreed to. We want to be able to, provide reminders, drafts of different tasks or other types of communications. I think the too many meetings piece of it, or just the meeting overload, the Zoom fatigue, is really, I believe the way to combat that is really by having more rich interactions within a meeting. I think if you go into a meeting excited, ready to contribute, which is not always the case, the outcome is always going to be better than if you're going into it reluctant. You don't want to talk to these people about this thing, whatever it is. that always leads to a worse outcome is our theory. Did I answer your question? I think there might have been another one there.
No, 100% you didn't. Actually, I think you give me a very clear build-on question to that, because you already have me thinking about what my meetings look like today. And it's obviously the world has changed a lot since 2020. And Robert, I'll out myself here that these days, anyone who's on a Google Meet call with me or a Zoom call, what it looks like is we have, my video is there, the person who I'm meetings with's video is there. But unfortunately, Robert, and I hate myself and I love myself for this, but I don't go into any meetings these days without my AI note taker, and I use read.ai. And the problem with that, I've actually never talked about this with anyone, Robert, it's fun to do this on the air with you, is that I feel bad because it takes up a lot of real estate and there's nothing there in that box. It actually detracts from the human experience. It's literally faceless and it just says Brian's AI note taker. It's like the most impersonal thing that could possibly happen. Of course, it brings benefits on the back end, and afterwards we use those notes and transcriptions to help us more deeply serve the people that we're connecting with. But I feel like it's moved us backwards in that connection element. What I think is really cool about what you've built is that it almost feels like it's real-time beneficial. It's there with us in the video conferencing room, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Google Meet, wherever it is that we are, and it's making our lives better in that moment without that added cost of detracting from our human connection. Paint that picture for people who obviously haven't experienced Kopa AI just yet. And actually, I'll zoom out. People who probably haven't experienced real-time AI benefits in any use case at this point. I think you're far ahead of the curve in that way. What does it actually look like to bring Kopa AI with me?
Yeah, so thank you for that. That is a great point. Rather than having Kopa AI join a call as a participant, we want each individual to have their own, coach that's sitting with them as if they're sitting right beside them almost. And we really want to put the meeting and the connections between the meeting participants really to the forefront. So certainly there's going to be a heavy emphasis on real-time feedback from Kopa. We don't want to be invasive. That's going to be something that we have to be very careful about. But the goal is to use the real estate on the screen to provide people with, notes, fill in gaps. Maybe somebody is multitasking and, they get called on and they need a little bit of a summary of what is being, asked of them. Also, just in general, like I'm doing it right now, adding filler words or removing filler words, removing, those maybe parts of behavior that lead to a worse maybe experience. For example, if somebody's clearly not paying attention, we want to not call them out to everybody, but we want to let them know that it's clear that, that other people might confuse their behavior, to allow them to maybe correct that in real time. Certainly, a lot of AI tools are user activated, where, maybe it's some kind of retrieval augmented generation where you're asking a system something about, your corporate data or news data or something like that. It's something that the user actually has to issue a command, for example, click on something. The other style, I guess, of tools, like you mentioned, the note taker, is really more passively, listening to, in this case, the audio stream, and is really more, valuable after the fact. What we want to do is we want to, instead of, passively listening, we want to have the Kopa actually drive the interaction, listening to to maybe the audio, watching the user's behavior, picking up on body language and micro gestures, and providing feedback, that is that is activated again by the AI system itself. So those are a couple of ways that it's a little bit different than some of the more traditional applications.
Yeah, and it's very cool, Robert. Honestly, your company and everything that you've built, to me, this is one of the reminders that the future is here now. And I think it's very exciting. I can think about so many different applications for this. I'm a visual learner, for example, and I think back to how many students these days. I mean, when I went to college, it was all you had to show up to class. But these days, how many students are watching class remotely, especially graduate level programs? Most of those seem remote at this point. A lot of times when professors would say things, I wish I could read it in real time. I will consume it so much more as I read it. Obviously, you are thinking about so many different use cases for this as you look at, I mean, you want to grow your business, of course, as well simultaneously. As you look at that growth roadmap, what are the use cases that you hone in on? Are you focused on certain things? Do you want to see Kopa AI be as versatile as possible across use cases and industries? How are you navigating all that in your mind?
Yeah, that is a great question. We have plenty of things that we want to place on the roadmap. We believe that you mentioned education. I think that's a natural industry to try and move into. Telehealth is another one. One thing that's come up a few times in these kind of conversations, with a lot of telehealth. It will be, one-on-one with a doctor, but the doctor a lot of times isn't really looking at the user who's talking. They're writing notes, or they're maybe typing the notes out. And so they may miss some of the, visual cues, micro gestures, body language that would indicate, maybe that a person is in more pain than they say that they are, or vice versa. So I think those are two natural, education and telehealth are two natural industries that we would want to, push into.
Yeah, it's cool hearing you talk about this, especially because you obviously have a very technical background that a lot of us don't probably fully appreciate everything that you're baking into your solution. But I want to go back to something that caught my ears earlier, because the more that I talk to technical founders like you, the more I realize things aren't what we probably assume outside of your world. And you talked about smaller language models. And Robert, I find it so interesting because when we look at OpenAI and what Google's doing with Gemini, and of course Claude is one of the big players as well, us as consumers, we just think bigger is better. To us, if you brag to me about the billions or trillions of parameters in your model, I just assume that model is better. I've been hearing this a little bit more, though, from technical founders about finding those smaller and effective models. That's going to be the path forward. Can you talk about that with us and the audience? Because I think it's so important for us as consumers to start to understand, hey, yeah, we've all gotten used to these large language models that we talk to with ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, but there's this next frontier of even more effective solutions. So I'd love for you to dispel some of that tech for us.
Sure. And I guess the way that I like to think about it is certainly, large language models, they're only going to get bigger. There's no reason, until I guess we exhaust the bits in the universe to not continue to grow and build onto those things. And that allows us really to kind of see connections between things that maybe seem disconnected. The reverse of that, when we're talking about smaller language models, first of all, I guess small language model is a little bit of a misnomer, at least in my mind, because they're still huge a lot of times. They can still be, certainly millions of parameters. But the idea, I guess, behind a lot of the smaller language models or smaller models, sometimes they're not necessarily language models, is that they are more fit to purpose when we already know relationships between things. I think there is value to, maintaining that and leaning into it in a way. One thing that we are going to experiment with, I guess, and understand what makes sense in that space, is that we believe that we can decompose some of the work that we're doing. We're doing it across different modes: video, audio, text, and maybe taking different approaches in how we analyze, say even the same video, we might take a different, perspective while we analyze it. We believe that if we create smaller language or smaller models that are more fit to purpose, that we can analyze those more specific relationships and then aggregate across a bunch of different types of relationships to get a very rich level of detail and understanding about that data in different ways. The other side of that is that we want to push the language models and the agents that kind of operate them closer to the end users, and that may be on edge locations in the cloud, or it ideally will even manifest as on-device models and agents that help us to both kind of offload some of our compute by pushing it closer to the user, speeding up some of our calculations by not having to transmit as much data over, to the cloud, and it also allows us to keep the data that we do transmit. If we want to, we can fully obfuscate it and almost by design adhere to certain restrictions and compliance measures like GDPR and other data privacy laws.
It's really cool hearing you talk about that, Robert, because I think we're all seeing, even if we step outside of the world of business for a second, the things that you're sharing with us here, this stuff matters on a societal level. There's so many big questions that we're answering with regards to energy, with regards to data centers, and it's really cool seeing in action a tech founder such as yourself, an innovative and a product designer, really thinking about all the ways that we can make this more efficient, because heck, we're all going to plug this stuff into our businesses and we want it to run efficiently for us in all the ways. So really important considerations there. I've got to ask you this, because just following that trend of how we all use AI these days, is we know everyone talks about prompting. We know that if you don't put good stuff in, you're not going to get good stuff out. And obviously, when we inject different AI solutions into our businesses, a lot of it is having a knowledge base, getting it up to speed, making sure that we're giving it the right stuff. What's that onboarding look like with Kopa AI? Because Robert, I'll confess to you, I already want it to come to all of my meetings from this point forward. That's a very exciting future that is already here. I want to remind for listeners, but part of me wonders, what does Kopa need to understand about me? What does it need to understand about my business? How do we make sure that it's obviously in our corner and working the way that we want it to?
That's a great question. I think that it will evolve over time. First of all, the basic idea would be that it already has enough data to kind of be useful on day one. So it doesn't. We are designing it so that it doesn't require a bunch of corporate or personal data, anything sensitive, to start being valuable. The idea would be that when you first start using it, it actually starts learning from you at that point, and based on how you interact with it, it will change how maybe it responds or behaves. If you tend to be more of a visual learner, it may provide more visual feedback. If you are exiting out of things or opting out, or choosing not to opt into things, it will maybe choose a different approach for how it responds. So that's the goal, is that it would really be kind of a blank slate when you turn it on, and it starts molding to each user and really becoming personal in that way.
That's very cool. Honestly, Robert, I'm everything that I see about what you've built. Not only is it solving a real life problem, but I get excited because, again, I just think you're so far ahead of where the market is currently with regards to people just saying to ChatGPT, hey, give me a 30-day social media plan. This is really that next wave of real-time AI that's in our corners, that's improving life in that exact moment, which to me, it's almost, I feel like a lot of people in mainstream media and mainstream narratives make it seem like these are opposing forces in life and society. But where I'm really looking at solutions like yours that you've brought to the market is, wow, this is something that's going to make me more present, more mindful in my day-to-day life, because it's handling a lot of the heavy lifting for me. I think about it every time. So I have a Tesla for 7 years now, and I think about it when I use full self-driving is people think, oh, can you sleep while you're on full self-drive? No, you can't. But then the other thing that I notice is because the car is worrying about the small things, like staying in the lane, keeping the car going at the right speed, braking when it needs to, it allows me to focus on the big things, and it makes me a safer driver in so many different ways. So really cool solution there. I want to zoom out because I knew time would fly by with you, but I want to squeeze in two more questions. The first of which is, I think it's so clear how much you pick up from all facets of your life, all facets of your career. It's really clear to me that you see those patterns and you take lessons from everywhere. You even mentioned at the top of this episode about the fact that you're a musician. And I would imagine there are things that you pull from music that you apply to business, things just broader in life. All of this is just a microcosm of life. Share some of that approach with us, Robert. I'm sure you've picked up some of those lessons and apply them. I'd love to get inside your mind and how it works in that regard.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I have that's crossed over in that way is the idea around discipline. It's kind of maybe a weird I don't know, segue or something, but I read something at one point from, I think it was the I'm going to forget the name. It was a lead singer of a band who was talking about songwriting, and really what he said, which stuck with me, was that he writes every day. It doesn't matter if it's good. It's not important if it's good. It's important that he's writing. It's definitely something that's been echoed by countless other writers. But that really stuck with me of like, if I want to be a good writer, if I want to be a good technologist, there's a discipline to it of doing it every day, even if it doesn't feel good, even if it's you're not inspired to do it. That getting that motivation or getting that momentum really creates kind of a motivation. So that's something that has really helped me build some of the projects that I've done on the side. Kopa is one of those projects that turned into something bigger, and just really keeping at it every day, rain or shine, and building that momentum has been really key, I think.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Robert, you're going to have to top that in just a minute because I'm going to ask you for your number one piece of advice. But really what you just shared with us there, it reminds me of a post that I saw on Reddit probably a decade ago. And I did a podcast episode about this once upon a time. But that concept that this guy posted on Reddit was simply called no 0 days. And he's like, some days I have all the energy in the world and I go forth and I knock things off of my to-do list. But on the days where I don't feel like doing anything, I will not let it be a 0 day. I will do one thing to move in the direction of my dreams. Even if that's sending one email, even if it's just having one new idea, I'm going to do something to not have a 0 day. So I love that concept that you shared with us. And now I am going to put you on the spot that one final time to leave us with one parting piece of advice, knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you very much are one of us as a fellow entrepreneur. What's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
I guess it's there's this concept of like, burn the boats. You get to shore and you burn the boats, or you cross the bridge and you burn the bridge and you just don't look back. I think that's definitely, there are so many days that you want to look back, and there's really no going back. Once you've set on that journey, you just have to see it all the way through.
Yes, that is such good advice. That's the entrepreneurial truth right there, Robert. There are many of those days and they never go away. I'm 17 years into my entrepreneurial journey, and so frequently I think back to that. It's a constant reminder that we need to give ourselves. So I'm grateful for this episode being that one where you share that with our audience. Again, super valuable advice there, Robert. I'm also very excited for listeners to check out all the goodness that you're putting into the world, all the cool things that you're building. So for people who want to check out Copacetic, I love that you've got a website there, as well as Kopa AI has its site as well for people to start trying it. Drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Sure. You can check out our website at projectkopa.com. That's projectkopa.com. You can also check me out on LinkedIn. It's Robert Charles Glenn. And I'm on X at Real Robert Glenn.
Yes, and we are dropping all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about remembering any of this. Don't worry about somehow finding Robert Glenn in what I imagine to be a sea of Robert Glenns on LinkedIn. We are linking directly to Robert's LinkedIn down below, so you can click right on through. Otherwise, Robert, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian.